Just before this episode, here's how you can get more from Never a Truer Word. If you're listening to this podcast on Spotify, you can subscribe to this channel to get early access to the weekly analysis episodes, video episodes so you can see the statements as I analyse them, and exclusive content too. And if you're here on YouTube, then become a member of the channel to get early access to everything and exclusive content not available anywhere else. Who is the Watcher? And what does the Watcher want? That's what we're looking at in this series from Never a Truer Word, where we look at the words that people choose to use to see if they're telling the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. And this is a real life mystery. It's a real story. It really did happen. You might know it from the Netflix series, which was a dramatization of this story, but it really did happen. And it happened to Derek and Maria Broaddus. They bought a house in Westfield, New Jersey in 2014 and then started receiving anonymous notes. And these anonymous notes really scared them. So we're breaking down these anonymous letters that they received to see if we can work out who is the Watcher, why was the Watcher sending them these letters, what was the intent behind them, what was it that the Watcher wanted to get from sending these letters. In episode 1, we read the first letter and we looked at my first impressions on who is the Watcher. I came to the conclusion that this is most likely female, maybe a flamboyant male, but most likely the Watcher is female. I thought they were connected to real estate, a job that involved a lot of houses and a lot of addresses, but maybe very closely involved with real estate or the development of real estate or something like that from the words and the concepts that they used. And I didn't think the Watcher was physically close to the Broadduses or this house. They wanted to give the impression they were watching the house very closely. I don't think they were, but I do think they were personally close to the Broadduses. They knew a lot about them. So let's have a look and see what we can learn from breaking down letter number 2. And it goes, Mr. and Mrs. Broaddus, and that's spelt wrong. They've used not the right spelling of Broaddus there. We'll deal with that. Welcome again to your new home at 657 Boulevard. The workers have been busy and I have been watching you unload carfuls of your personal belongings. The dumpster is a nice touch. Have they found what is in the walls yet? In time they will. Then in the letter, the Watcher boasts of having learned a lot about the family in the preceding weeks, especially about their children. They identified the Broadduses' 3 kids by birth order and by their nicknames. These nicknames Maria had been yelling around the house at 657 Boulevard. The Watcher continues, I am pleased to know your names now and the name of the young blood you have brought to me. You certainly say their names often. The letter then asks about one child in particular whom the writer has seen using an easel which was inside an enclosed porch, and asks, is she the artist in the family? 657 Boulevard is anxious for you to move in. It has been years and years since the young blood ruled the hallways of the house. Have you found all of the secrets it holds yet? Will the young blood play in the basement, or are they too afraid to go down there alone? I would be very afraid if I were them. It is far away from the rest of the house. If you were upstairs, you would never hear them scream. Will they sleep in the attic, or will you all sleep on the second floor? Who has the bedrooms facing the street? I'll know as soon as you move in. It will help me to know who is in which bedroom. Then I can plan better. All of the windows and doors in 657 Boulevard allow me to watch you and track you as you move through the house. Who am I? I am the Watcher, and I have been in control of 657 Boulevard for the better part of 2 decades now. The Woods family turned it over to you. It was their time to move on and kindly sold it when I asked them to. I pass by many times a day. 657 Boulevard is my job, my life, my obsession. And now you are too, Broaddus family. Welcome to the product of your greed. Greed is what brought the past 3 families to 657 Boulevard, and now it has brought you to me. Have a happy moving in day. You know I will be watching. So the letter starts by addressing them by name. Last time it just said, Dear New Neighbour, and I thought they were addressing it to one person, but this time they are addressing it to both of them, Mr. and Mrs. Broaddus, as they spell it, Braddus. The correct spelling is Broaddus, Broaddus. I think this is a deliberate misspelling going on. To get that spelling of that quite unusual surname, Broaddus, if you heard it, how would you spell it? I probably would have only used one D. They keep the two Ds in there, which is correct, but they drop the O to say Broaddus. Broaddus, not Broaddus. So I wonder if this is to throw them off the scent that this person knows a lot about the Broadduses, including how to spell their name. And the fact they make the same misspelling twice in this letter suggests to me this is a deliberate misspelling. The letter continues. Welcome again to your new home at 657 Boulevard. Welcome again is the introduction. Welcome again. They've already welcomed them. There's this something about getting some control over them. Oh, so, you're here and I'm welcoming you. I own this house. I rule this house. I am the person that can welcome you here. They call the house by name again. Happens so many times throughout all the letters. Instead of saying welcome to your new home and leaving it at that, they say where it is, 657 Boulevard. Again, I'm thinking real estate or delivery people or things like that. Someone who thinks of houses not by who lives there, but by the address of the house. They say the workers have been busy. Now that makes us feel like they have been very closely watching the workers, but actually, is that just a good guess? And when I say good guess, I don't mean some sort of genius guess that's come from nowhere. But look, if people are hiring other people to work on their house, to do some work before they move in, they're not going to be sitting around idly, because we do not pay people to work in our house and sit around idly. We pay them to be busy. So the workers have been busy. And I have been watching you. Now, that doesn't need to be said, but they really want to get across that they have been watching the Broadduses. I don't think they have been. I think there's some good guesses coming up, but I don't think they have been watching and keeping an eye on what the Broadduses have been doing at this house as closely as they would like the Broadduses to believe in these letters. I have been watching you, and I've been watching you unload carfuls of your personal belongings. Again, I think this is just a good guess. When people move house, they tend to put their most precious belongings or the things that are most important to them that they really need to get hold of quickly inside the car, not in some van that's doing all the removals, but inside the car. So again, another good guess, but one that could be informed by an experience in the real estate industry. Yes, that's really what could be going on there. Someone who knows how people move house, lots of experience of how people move house, and know that the personal belongings go in the car. The dumpster is a nice touch. Well, that is a bit different. Is that a good guess, or is that some knowledge there? Have they been past the house to see there is a dumpster there? Or potentially they've seen some pictures that show there is a dumpster there. But the dumpster is a nice touch. Suggests to me a little bit more knowledge than some of the other things, which are just good guesses. The dumpster is a nice touch. Dumpster, quite a modern word for someone who tries to use some old-fashioned language at some times as well. The watcher then asks, have they found what is in the walls yet? Who's they? To scare the Broadduses, have you found what is in the walls yet would be more direct. So is they the workers? That's the only they that has been introduced so far. But who is they? And once more, the watcher does this thing of not saying things out loud, of not saying specific things, but alluding to things in the form of questions. Have they found what is in the walls yet? They never are specific about any of these scary things that are supposedly inside the house. Just have they found what is in the walls yet? In time they will. Then the watcher boasted of having learned a lot about the family in the preceding weeks, especially the names of the children, the nicknames of the children, and the order of their birth. And now, that again suggests to me someone who knows the Broadduses physically, personally, or is close to the Broadduses personally. These are things that you could have got through looking at social media, if the social media is quite open, maybe by some records that are available to the public, or maybe by being kind of close to that family in general. I'm pleased to know your names now, says the watcher, and the name of the young blood you have brought to me. And we have this term again, young blood, to talk about the children. Is a very visceral term. Again, makes me think of horror books, horror movies, describing them as young blood. Talks about the young blood you have brought to me. Who's the villain of this letter? Because at times they want to say that there are all these secrets and this malevolent horribleness inside 657 Boulevard. And at times it's them that's the villain because the children are being brought to the Watcher. Not to the house, but to the Watcher. And actually, when we look at it across the letters, the badness is in the house apart from when it comes to the children. And the badness towards the children comes from the Watcher. I mentioned that this came to me when I listened to a couple of really excellent podcasts from the Consult True Crime podcast. I highly recommend you listen to the podcast, but their episodes on The Watcher are fascinating, and they made a very good point that you certainly say their names often sounds like judgment on the parenting. In fact, it gives off mother-in-law vibes. Now, hold on. I am not saying the mother-in-law of one of the Broadduses is the Watcher, but it's that mother-in-law judgmental about the parents, interfering mother-in-law judgmental about the parents vibe that seems to be coming through here. Someone with judgment about the parenting skills of at least one of the Broadduses. The letter continues, 657 Boulevard is anxious for you to move in, and we have this thought of the house as a person again. Houses don't get anxious, but in this story, the house is anxious. It's this characterization, again, makes me think this is someone who's a fan of literature, someone who's a fan of horror as a genre, either the films or the books there, to say that 657 Boulevard is anxious. And then they mention lots of things around the house which seem quite specific until you break them down. It has been years and years since the young blood ruled the hallways of the house. Well, years and years sounds like, I know it's been a long time since children were at the house, but what does years and years mean? 3 or 4? 35? It doesn't say. There's nothing specific about that. It's just this phrase, years and years. And then talk about the hallways of the house. Well, again, that sounds like some intimate knowledge of the house until you think about it. And if you had seen a picture of the house, especially if you work in real estate, you would know that house has hallways. The same as basement. A house that size, very likely to have a basement. And that basement will be far away from the rest of the house. And if you were upstairs, you might not hear sounds from the basement. So while this sounds, again, it's designed to unsettle the Broadduses about how much this person knows about the house, but these are all just good guesses. It's something fake mediums employ. It's called the Barnum statement, where the fake medium will be giving a reading and they will say something and the person getting the reading will go, oh, that's amazing. How did you know that very specific thing about me? And if you step back and look at what the medium said, it applies to so many people. It's a very broad, very generic statement. It just seems at the time very specific, and that's what we have here. More questions, again, from the Watcher. Have you found all of the secrets it holds yet? Will the young blood play in the basement? They don't know anything. They want to pretend that they know anything. They want to know that the Broadduses to know that things await them, but they don't know anything about the house. And also just notice that there, I think that they can only see the outside of the house. They talk about the dumpster. They talk about the workers being there. But that's quite specific. But when it comes to specifics of the inside, none whatsoever. These are all just good guesses. The letter continues. Will they sleep in the attic or will you all sleep on the second floor? Who has the bedrooms facing the street? More questions here. The Watcher again showing that they don't know anything. But again, good guesses about attic, second floor, house facing the street. But really, these are all just questions designed to unsettle. These questions, when you hear a question, you have to think about the answer. When you think about the answer, you might start worrying about what the answer could be. I'll know as soon as you move in. Again, this is a sense that they don't know anything, but they do know that the Broadduses haven't moved in yet. They want to know who's sleeping in which bedroom. Then I can plan better. Plan what? They don't say. Once more, there's a lack of specifics in this letter. I can plan what better? We know they want our minds to start racing about what's going to happen to us in our sleep, or what's going to happen to the kids in their sleep, but they don't say. They don't come out and say it. They just want to create fear with these generic statements and with these questions. They don't say what they can plan. Also, they spoke earlier about they were going to get the kids in the basement while the adults were upstairs, but now they're going to get them in the bedroom when they're asleep. The Watcher continues, all of the windows and doors in 657 Boulevard allow me to watch you and track you as I move through the house. So we have this mention of windows again. In letter number 1, they spoke about windows a lot, saying that the Watcher may be looking out of a window across the street, or saying, look out the window and you may see me walk past in the street. So windows come up again from the Watcher. And they say these windows allow the Watcher to watch you and track you as you move through the house. Get that, windows are transparent and you can use windows to track people inside the house, but doors, all of the windows and doors in 657 Boulevard allow me to watch you and track you as you move through the house. You cannot watch through doors. So what, again, when someone's lying, their words will betray them. And the Watcher may be a very good liar. They may have planned these letters. This might not be the first draft that gets sent. They might well have thought about them a long time, written and rewritten them. But this one here, you cannot look through doors. The doors do not allow you to watch and track someone. So look, this is way too supernatural for this to be honest, but this is implicit here that the Watcher is lying. Something else I've noticed is windows and doors come up as a concept here. If you look at writing or statements around experiences of abuse, windows and doors come up a lot in those. Windows are an escape route, and if windows are closed, that is a bad thing when the abuse is involved. Doors are an entry that someone will take you into a room, close the door, and something bad will happen. Is there something like that going on here? The Watcher says they have been in control of the house for the better part of 2 decades. And once again, we have this lack of specificity there. 2 decades, what does that mean? Better part of 2 decades, what does that mean? Although they want to give the impression of all these things going on, there's just nothing specific to back it up. And they say they have been in control of 657 Boulevard for the better part of 2 decades. And this contradicts the first letter. In the first letter, they said 657 Boulevard had been the subject of my family. Not that 657 Boulevard had been in control of the family or that the family had lived there. They just said the house was the subject of my family. Now they've moved that subject to being in control there. And they also said in the first letter, their grandfather had watched the house in the 1920s, their father had watched the house in the 1960s, and now in 2014 they said, now it's my time. That being, now it's my time to watch the house. But they've been in control of it for 2 decades as well. We've got some contradictory facts there going on. So this is a person who's lying. The Watcher says, I pass by many times a day. 657 Boulevard is my job, my life, my obsession. Look at the way that's ordered. Job comes first, life comes second, obsession comes last. I said before, I think this person works in something to do with real estate, design, something involving addresses, maybe a sort of council function or something like that. But they put the address and job very, very close together. We've got the misspelling of Broaddus again as Broaddus. Braddus is how they've spelt it. Broaddus is how it should be spelled, but I think because we've seen the same misspelling twice now, it's a deliberate misspelling to throw the Broadduses off the track about how well the Watcher knows them. And we have greed come up again. Welcome to the product of your greed. Greed is what brought the past 3 families to 657 Boulevard, and now it has brought you to me. So greed is mentioned twice here. Greed was mentioned in the first letter as well, but very much like the first letter, it's very odd. How does having a house, how does that bring about a product of your greed? People need houses to live in, basically. It's not greedy to have a house, and it doesn't seem especially greedy for the Broadduses to have a house to put their 3 children in that is that size. It may be nice, it may be comfortable, maybe to someone who is not very well off at all. It could be seen as greedy, it could be seen as having more than you actually need, but greed, and that's what brought the other 3 families to 657 Boulevard. Is this about house prices and buying a house and selling it on at a large profit because it was an investment and house prices have risen? Don't know. And they don't say, and that's very interesting. Why do they not say what the greed is, the issue they have with greed? The Watcher finishes by saying, have a happy moving in day. You know I will be watching. Once more, we know here from what the Watcher says that they know the Broadduses haven't moved in yet. That is some knowledge that they definitely have. And you know I will be watching. They really want to convince the Broadduses that the Watcher is watching them much more closely, I think, than the Watcher actually is watching them. And that's letter number 2. So what's going on there? What is the intent of the letter? Why is the Watcher writing to the Broadduses and saying this? The only thing I can think of is to scare them. The stuff they overplay, the creepiness of the house, the things that could happen with the children, which is very, very personal, is to scare the Broadduses. All these question marks about things that potentially could happen, to get their minds starting to think about the worst things that could happen and to get that going off. So the only thing I can think of there, the intent behind sending the letter, is to scare the Broadduses. There's no call to action. There is no, you need to stop doing this, otherwise this will happen, or I would like you to start doing this, otherwise bad things will happen. None of that sort of threat in there whatsoever. It's just all this non-specific threats and spookiness and creepiness going on there. Who do you think is the target of the Watcher? Is it her? Is it Maria Broaddus? Well, that judgment of the parenting that we saw there certainly could be. I'm being slightly stereotypical there. I know that men and women are both responsible for parenting, but is it her? Is it around her parenting? That comment about the judgment on, you certainly say their names a lot, felt like a judgment on someone's parenting. Or is it him? Is it Derek Broaddus? Is he the greedy one because he's a businessman as far as I know, or works in finance or something like that? So was he seen as greedy by the Watcher? Maybe Maria is greedy, seen as greedy by the Watcher. These two things could flip on their head, but who do you think is the target of the Watcher? Once more, what does the Watcher reveal that they know for sure from the letter? Names of the children, names of the Broadduses as well. The spellings of the names as well, I think, is revealed there. And they do know external things about the house. So the artist was sitting on a porch. I know it was an enclosed porch, but it was outside that they knew this happened. And they do know about the dumpster as well. So they do know some external things around the house. They do know that the Broadduses haven't moved in yet as well. And they also know about the woods. The previous owners of the house before the Broadduses, they were the previous owners of the house. And the Watcher does have some knowledge of the woods. So who is the Watcher? After letter 2, what has changed for me? Still see so many signs that the Watcher works in real estate or something very closely related to real estate. They really seem to have a knowledge of how houses work and how house moves work as well. I still think the Watcher is personally close to the Broadduses. Doesn't mean they're a great friend or a family member or anything like that. The closeness to the Broadduses is in the personal sense. They're not physically close. They're not watching that house 24/7 and knowing everything that the Broadduses are up to. The Watcher is judgmental. You certainly say their names a lot is definitely something that the Watcher has going for them. They are a judgmental person. And I still think the Watcher is female. In fact, there's more signs, I think, there that they were female than in letter 1. But for that young blood comment. So what could make a woman think of children and blood? One of the things could be abortion, miscarriage, something like that. Is that how they view children? Is this potentially a childless person who's a little bit, maybe suffered a miscarriage or something like that and is a little bit jealous of the number of children that the Broadduses have? It could be. What do you think? Maybe letter 3 will change your mind. Let's have a look at letter 3. Where have you gone to? 657 Boulevard is missing you. Are you one of those Hoboken transplants that are ruining Westfield? The house is crying from all of the pain it is going through. You have changed it and made it so fancy. You are stealing its history. It cries for the past and what used to be in the time when I roamed the halls. The 1960s were a good time for 657 Boulevard, when I ran from room to room, imagining the life with the rich occupants there. The house was full of life and young blood. Then it got old, and so did my father, but he kept watching until the day he died. And now I watch and wait for the day when the young blood will be mine again. We'll look at letter 3 in episode 3 of this series from Never a Truer Word. Do let me know in the comments if you can, or on social media. You'll find all the links for social media in the show notes. Who do you think the Watcher is? Why do you think the Watcher was sending letters? You can find all the details there. And if you like this, press the like button or the plus button, whatever's in front of you, because that will help the Watcher story get out to more people. Don't forget, neveratruerword.com is the website where you will find a whole load more videos and podcasts about the words of people in the news and delving into the words that people say or people write to find out what is really going on. And we'll see you soon for episode 3 of The Watcher from Never a Truer Word.